Besides protective services officers, young people on public transport might also come across ticket inspectors, officially known as Authorised Officers. Authorised Officers. What rights does a young person have, and what powers do Authorised Officers have in a situation like this? 16-year-old Jaden was on a train when an Authorised Officer got on and asked to see Jaden's ticket. Jaden showed her his concession ticket, but when she asked to see his healthcare card, he told her he'd left it at home. The Authorised Officer told Jaden to get off the train with her and a group of other officers at the next stop, which he did. The Authorised Officer started writing up a fine for Jaden for not having a valid concession card. When she asked him for his address, Jaden told her he was living in a youth refuge and he wasn't allowed to give his address, but he could give her a PO box address. The Authorised Officer said she couldn't accept a PO box address and arrested Jaden until the police arrived so they could verify his address. Did the Authorised Officer have the power to arrest Jaden? Authorised Officers have the power to ask for your name and address if they have reason to believe that you've committed a public transport-related offence. They also have the power to detain or arrest you without a warrant if they believe on reasonable grounds that it's necessary to verify your address, preserve public order, or to stop you from committing an offence. They have the power to detain you for the amount of time that it takes to verify your identity, and they can use reasonable force if they are detaining you for that reason. If you are being detained by an Authorised Officer for any other reason, they must hand you over to police as soon as possible. Could Jaden get fined by the Authorised Officer for not having his healthcare card on him? Authorised Officers have the power to fine people for public transport-related offences like travelling without a valid ticket, tampering with ticketing gates, littering, drinking, or smoking on public transport. Jaden may be able to get his fine overturned if he writes to the Department of Transport asking for internal review and shows them a copy of his healthcare card which was valid on the relevant date. If you need advice about making internal review requests like this, you can contact a legal service, like us here at Youth Law. Would the Authorised Officer have the power to search Jaden, say for drugs or weapons, like police and PSOs do? Authorised Officers don't have special search powers, and they can only search you with your consent. So, what were Jaden's rights in that situation? He has the right to ask for the name and identification of the Authorised Officer, just like he has the right to ask that information of police officers. Jaden's treatment was pretty unfair, given that he's homeless, and the Authorised Officer didn't try any other methods of verifying Jaden's address before arresting him. So how can Jaden complain about the Authorised Officer? For a start, Jaden should complain to the transport operator, which in this case is Public Transport Victoria. If Jaden isn't happy with the outcome, he could contact the Public Transport Ombudsman. The Public Transport Ombudsman is a free, independent dispute resolution body set up to resolve complaints about Victorian public transport operators. The Public Transport Ombudsman will try and resolve the complaint in a way that both Jaden and the operating service are happy with. But if they can't agree, the Ombudsman can either dismiss the complaint or make a binding decision that forces the operator to do something to fix the situation. There is also Ombudsman Victoria, who receive complaints about the conduct of all state government employees and authorities, and Jaden could make a complaint to that Ombudsman as well. Ombudsman Victoria tends to deal with more serious complaints against Authorised Officers, like unreasonable use of force and unlawful arrest. Security guards, bouncers, and loss prevention officers. Police, protective services officers, and Authorised Officers all have special powers by law. There are others out there like security guards and loss prevention officers who might wear a uniform and act like authority figures, but don't actually have any more powers than a regular person. It's easy to get confused about the powers of security guards and loss prevention officers in situations like this. Achol is 20 years old. She recently migrated from Sudan to Australia. She walked into a supermarket with her young daughter sleeping in a pram. When she went to leave the supermarket, she was stopped by a woman. The woman introduced herself as a loss prevention officer, employed by the supermarket. She told Achol that that she believed a chol was concealing items in her pram that she didn't pay for. A chol showed the loss prevention officer her receipt as proof that she paid for all the goods. But the officer said she still believed there were things hidden in the pram that a chol didn't pay for, and that she was going to search a chol's pram. A chol wasn't sure what was going on and was worried about her daughter, so she said no and tried to stop the loss prevention officer from touching the pram. The loss prevention officer said, "Well, if you won't let me search your pram, then you must be hiding something. I am putting you under arrest for theft." More security people arrived and escorted a chol and her pram to the office area, where she waited for police to arrive. When the police got there, they searched her pram and found a toothbrush which had fallen down the side of the basket. A chol explained that she did not see it down there, and her daughter must have grabbed it and dropped it down there without her knowing. A chol immediately offered to pay for the toothbrush. Do loss prevention officers and security guards have special powers like police to arrest a chol? Loss prevention officers, bouncers, and security guards don't have the same powers as police. In fact, they only have the same powers as ordinary citizens do. That means they can only search you if you agree to being searched. They can only arrest you as a citizen's arrest. That is, if they see you actually committing an offence red-handed. They can only use reasonable force to make the arrest, and they can only hold you until the police arrive. They can ask you to leave the premises, just like you can ask someone to leave your home, and they can use reasonable force to make you leave the premises if you refuse. What were a chol's rights in that situation? A chol had the right to refuse the search by the loss prevention officer, which she did. She also has the right to privacy and to be free from arbitrary arrest. The loss prevention officer didn't actually see a chol committing an offence, but just suspected her of committing one, so her arrest and her detention was not legal. What should a chol do if she wants to make a complaint about the loss prevention officer? If a security guard, bouncer, or loss prevention officer commits an offence, like unlawful assault or false imprisonment, then they can be charged and prosecuted by police, just like anyone else. In this case, a chol could make a complaint to her local police station about the loss prevention officer. She could also make a complaint to supermarket management, or if the supermarket weren't the loss prevention officer's direct employer, to the security firm that employs the loss prevention officer. There are also industry associations that security firms belong to, so a chol could escalate her complaint to them. Associations like the Australian Security Industry Association can step in and help mediate between her and the loss prevention officer's superiors to try and reach an outcome that everyone's happy with. If a chol feels she was discriminated against, she could make a complaint to the Victorian Equal Opportunity and Human Rights Commission, or to the Australian Human Rights Commission. A chol could also look at suing the loss prevention officer or her employer. For help with these options, a chol should approach a legal service like Youth Law for some advice and referrals.